Imagine losing everything. Your family, your fortune, your future, all because of a cruel betrayal by those closest to you. That's Jiyeon Park's story. But this isn't just about falling. It's about a phoenix rising from the ashes, meticulously planning every single move for a revenge so cold, so calculated, it will leave you questioning the true cost of justice. Get ready, because Jiyeon is about to reclaim her empire, brick by painful brick. Jiyeon Park's world was a shimmering, meticulously crafted tapestry of privilege and expectation. A golden cage woven from the threads of old money and an empire built by her father's relentless vision. From the sprawling penthouse in Gangnam, where the city lights glittered like scattered diamonds below, to the hushed halls of the Mirai Group's headquarters, every facet of her life bespoke of an inherited grandeur. She was the sole heiress, the cherished daughter of Jiyeon Park, a man whose name was synonymous with innovation and integrity in the cutthroat Korean business landscape. June, a widower for most of Jiyeon's life, had poured all his devotion and ambition into his only child, grooming her not just for leadership, but for a life of purpose. He saw in her the fire of his own youth, tempered by a gentle spirit he cherished above all else. Their bond was the bedrock of Jiyeon's existence, a sanctuary of unconditional love amidst the demanding grandeur. Jiyeon, at 22, was not yet fully initiated into the labyrinthine complexities of Mirai Group, but her father had begun the process. She attended board meetings, observing with a quiet intensity, absorbing the nuances of corporate strategy and the delicate dance of power. Her days were a structured ballet of private tutors, language lessons, and charitable engagements, all designed to mold her into the perfect successor. Yet, beneath the polished veneer, Jiyeon harbored a simpler joy in quiet moments, tending to her small rooftop garden, losing herself in classic literature, or sharing a simple late-night meal with her father, where he would regale her with stories of Mirai's humble beginnings. These were the moments she truly treasured, the fleeting glimpses of normalcy that anchored her. She admired her father fiercely, his unwavering moral compass, his dedication to his employees, and his deep-seated belief that business could be a force for good. He was her hero, her protector, and her guide. Then, the world shattered. It began as a whisper, a frantic call in the dead of night that wrenched Jiyeon from a peaceful slumber. Her father, Jiyeon Park, had been involved in a tragic car accident on a treacherous mountain pass, returning from an emergency site visit. The news, delivered by a trembling family lawyer, was a cruel, blunt instrument that struck at the very core of her being. He was gone. Just like that, the titan who had shaped her world, the man who had promised to stand by her side as she navigated the future of Mirai, was no more. The vibrant colors of her life drained to a desolate monochrome. The initial days were a blur of grief, a suffocating fog of tears and disbelief. The grand penthouse, once a haven, now felt like a mausoleum, each echo of her own footsteps a stark reminder of his absence. Amidst the crushing weight of her sorrow, a new presence emerged, seemingly to offer solace. Her aunt, Hyejin Lee, her father's younger sister, arrived with her husband, Minjun Lee. Hyejin, a woman of sharp features and an even sharper wit, had always been a peripheral figure, present at family gatherings but never truly close. Minjun, her husband, was a man of quiet ambition, often seen hovering in Hyejin's shadow. They embraced Jiyeon with a practiced warmth, their voices dripping with condolences. Their eyes, Jiyeon noted even through her haze of grief, carrying a peculiar glint she couldn't quite decipher. "My poor dear Jiyeon," Hyejin would lament, stroking her hair with a hand that felt oddly cold. "To lose your beloved father so suddenly. We are here for you, always." They moved into the penthouse, ostensibly to support her, to manage the immediate affairs of the funeral and the overwhelming influx of condolences. At first, Jiyeon welcomed their presence, mistaking their efficiency for genuine care. They handled the arrangements with a chilling professionalism, shielding her from the press, managing the stream of visitors, and whispering reassurances about the future of Mirai. "Your father would, have wanted us to protect his legacy, and you, Jiyeon," Minjun would say, his voice smooth and reassuring. We will ensure everything is managed properly during this difficult time. Yet beneath the veneer of familial support, a subtle, insidious shift began. Documents appeared for her signature, ostensibly routine probate papers, but always presented during her most vulnerable moments, when her mind was clouded by anguish. "Just a formality, dear," Jiyeon would coo, guiding her hand. "Your father's wishes, you understand." Jiyeon, lost in the abyss of her grief, barely registered the growing whispers, the sudden changes in household staff, the way her father's most trusted advisors seemed to be slowly, almost imperceptibly, sidelined. The familiar faces in the Mirai Group's executive meetings, where she now sat as a silent, grieving observer, began to shift. New faces, loyal to Hyejin and Minjun, appeared with increasing frequency. Her aunt and uncle began to speak of interim management and stabilizing the company's leadership with an unsettling regularity, their words painting a picture of a fragile Mirai in need of their steady hands. They spoke of her youth, her inexperience, subtly undermining her capacity to lead, even as they publicly affirmed her position as the rightful heiress. The golden cage, once a symbol of her protected existence, now felt like a trap. The walls, once adorned with her father's love, seemed to close in, the air growing thin with unspoken intentions. Jiyeon, still reeling from the seismic shock of her father's death, started to feel a different kind of tremor, a chilling premonition that something far more sinister than grief was unfolding around her. Her inheritance, the legacy her father had painstakingly built, was not just slipping away, but being meticulously dismantled, piece by agonizing piece, right before her tear-filled eyes. Her world, which had already crumbled, was now being systematically swept away, leaving her standing on the precipice of an abyss she never knew existed. Before we dive deeper into Jiyeon's incredible journey, tell me in the comments, where are you watching this from today? The legal battle for Jiyeon's inheritance was a brutal, swift maelstrom that swept through her life with the destructive force of a typhoon. It was less a fair fight and more an execution, orchestrated with chilling precision by Hyejin and Minjun Lee. In the initial weeks following her father's death, Jiyeon, still adrift in a sea of sorrow, found herself overwhelmed by a deluge of legal documents, corporate jargon, and the cold, impassive faces of lawyers she had never met. Her father's longtime legal counsel, Mr. Kim, a man Jiyeon had always trusted, had been subtly replaced. The new legal team, assembled by her aunt and uncle, spoke with the detached authority of executioners, their words sharp blades dissecting her future. The core of their argument was simple, yet devastatingly effective. Jiyeon, at 22, lacked the experience, the business acumen, and the emotional fortitude to lead a conglomerate as vast and complex as Mirai Group. They presented carefully curated evidence, minor missteps during her brief internships, an overly emotional outburst at a board meeting during her grief, even an old medical report vaguely referencing stress-induced anxiety, to paint a picture of an unstable, incompetent heir. "Jiyeon, my dear," Hyejin had said, her voice laced with feigned regret during a particularly tense meeting. "It pains us to do this, but for the good of Mirai, and for your own well-being, we must ensure stable leadership. Your father would have wanted Mirai to thrive." Jiyeon, still grappling with the profound emptiness left by her father's absence, found herself utterly outmaneuvered. Her attempts to articulate her father's vision, to speak of her training, were dismissed as naive ramblings. The legal proceedings were expedited, a blur of formal hearings and paperwork that seemed designed to disorient and defeat her. Her pleas to trusted family friends, once stalwarts of her father's inner circle, were met with sympathetic but ultimately non-committal responses. The influence of Hyejin and Minjun, now firmly entrenched in Mirai's temporary leadership, was far-reaching and insidious. They had systematically isolated Jiyeon, severing her connections, painting her as a fragile, emotional girl, unfit for the burdens of leadership. Adding insult to injury was the constant sneering presence of her cousin, Seojin Lee. Hyejin and Minjun's only son, Seojin was a man of inflated ego and mediocre talent, who had always resented Jiyeon's position as the favored heiress. Now he reveled in her downfall. He would appear at the penthouse, ostensibly to check in, but his visits were veiled taunts. "Look at you, Jiyeon," he'd smirk, lounging in what was once her father's favorite armchair. "Lost your touch, haven't you? This business world is no place for delicate flowers." He made no secret of his ambition to step into the void Jiyeon was leaving, already parading through the Mirai offices as if he owned them, his arrogance a festering wound in Jiyeon's raw grief. The final verdict was a foregone conclusion. The court, swayed by the meticulously constructed narrative of Jiyeon's incapacity and her relatives' responsible stewardship, ruled in favor of an interim board, effectively placing Mirai Group under Hyejeon and Minjun's control. Jiyeon was granted a paltry stipend, a fraction of her inheritance, deemed sufficient for her care, but utterly inadequate for her former lifestyle or any meaningful independence. Her assets were frozen, her personal accounts limited, and the grand penthouse, her childhood home, was declared corporate property to be repurposed. She was stripped of everything: her fortune, her home, her social standing. The once revered Park name was now whispered with pity and scorn in the elite circles of Seoul, branded as naive, incompetent, and a failed heir. The day she was cast out was etched into her memory with bitter clarity. The movers, cold and efficient, packed the remnants of her life into anonymous boxes. Hyejeon stood by the doorway, a look of triumphant pity on her face. "It's for the best, Jiyeon," she said, a saccharine sweetness coating her words. "A fresh start, away from all this pressure. Perhaps a quiet life is what you truly need." Minjun offered a curt nod, while Seojin, leaning against a doorframe, openly chuckled. "Don't forget us, cousin," he called out, "when you're working in some provincial cafe, wondering what might have been." Jiyeon stood on the curb, a single worn suitcase at her feet, the biting autumn wind whipping around her. The grand gates of her home, the symbol of her golden cage, closed behind her with a final, echoing clang. She hailed a taxi, her destination a nondescript train station on the outskirts of Seoul. She looked back, once at the towering edifice of the Mirai Group building in the distance, a monument to her father's legacy, now defiled by the hands of traitors. A searing resentment, cold and hard, settled deep within her. It wasn't just anger, it was a profound sense of injustice, a burning desire to reclaim what was rightfully hers. The tears had finally run dry, replaced by a steely resolve. As the train pulled away from the bustling metropolis, carrying her further and further from the life she had known, Jiyeon Park, the discarded heiress, looked out at the fading cityscape. Her world had been stolen, her name slandered, her spirit broken, but not extinguished. A tiny, defiant spark flickered in the darkness, promising a reckoning. She was leaving Seoul with nothing but the clothes on her back, the bitter taste of betrayal on her tongue, and an unshakable vow. This was not the end. It was merely the beginning of her long, arduous ascent from the ashes of her ruin. Years stretched into a decade, each one a crucible that refined Jiyeon Park from a grieving victim into a woman of formidable will and calculated resolve. The vibrant, privileged heiress was a ghost of the past, shed like an old skin. Her journey began in the quiet anonymity of provincial towns, far from the blinding lights and judging eyes of Seoul. She started with nothing, literally. Her paltry stipend had quickly run dry amidst the initial shock and the need for basic survival. To live, she took on any work she could find, waitressing in dusty roadside diners, cleaning rooms in rundown motels, picking vegetables on rural farms. The work was grueling, the pay meager, and the conditions harsh, a stark contrast to the cushioned existence she had once known. Every aching muscle, every blistered hand, every hungry night was a lesson. She learned the value of $1, the grind of honest labor, and the brutal indifference of the world to a fallen princess. Her delicate hands hardened, her soft skin weathered, but more importantly, her mind sharpened. She observed people, learning their tells, their motivations, their weaknesses. She listened more than she spoke, absorbing snippets of conversation, local gossip, and the quiet wisdom of the working class. She learned to blend in, to become invisible, a skill she instinctively knew would be vital for her future. Her grief, once a debilitating force, slowly transmuted into a cold, burning ember of determination. The memory of her father, once a source of unbearable pain, became a guiding light, a constant reminder of the legacy she had to reclaim. It was in a small coastal town, during her stint as a bookkeeper for a struggling fishing cooperative, that destiny, or perhaps fate, intervened. The cooperative was teetering on the brink of collapse, mismanaged and exploited by larger distributors. Jiyeon, with her innate intelligence and the fragments of business knowledge gleaned from her father's tutelage, quickly identified the inefficiencies and potential for fraud. She began to discreetly reorganize their finances, streamline their operations, and even suggest new market approaches. Her quiet competence did not go unnoticed, particularly by an elderly reclusive man named Mr. Han, a former financial analyst who had once advised Jiyeon Park and was now living out his retirement by the sea, haunted by his own past failures. Mr. Han, with his sharp, knowing eyes and a perpetual air of contemplative wisdom, recognized the spark in Jiyeon. He saw not just a bright young woman, but the unmistakable silhouette of Jiyeon Park's daughter, albeit weathered and hardened. He approached her cautiously, observing her work, her dedication, her almost obsessive attention to detail. One evening, as Jiyeon meticulously balanced ledgers under the dim light of the cooperative's office, Mr. Han offered her a cup of bitter herbal tea. "You have your father's eyes, young one," he stated, his voice raspy. "And his mind, it seems, though it has been tempered by fire." That night marked the beginning of her true transformation. Mr. Han became her mentor, her quiet guide in the shadows. He saw her simmering desire for justice, her raw potential, and painstakingly began to mold her. He taught her what she had lost: the intricate dance of corporate finance, the ruthless logic of market strategy, the art of the hostile takeover, and the subtle manipulation of public perception. "The corporate world is a battlefield, Jiyeon," he would explain, sketching complex diagrams on whiteboards in his small, cluttered study. "And your enemies are masters of deception. You must learn to play their game, but with your own rules." He taught her about shell corporations, derivatives, strategic mergers, and the delicate balance of power in a boardroom. He drilled into her the importance of meticulous research, ironclad legal strategy, and the psychological warfare inherent in high-stakes business. He revealed to her the true depth of Hyejin and Minjun's betrayal, detailing how they had systematically dismantled her father's network, manipulated legal clauses, and presented a fabricated narrative to the courts. Mr. Han, burdened by guilt for not having been able to protect Jiyeon Park's legacy, poured all his remaining energy into Jiyeon. Seeing her as his last chance at redemption, he pushed her relentlessly, challenging her assumptions, forcing her to think like a predator, not a prey. He taught her to control her emotions, to channel her anger into a cold, calculating precision. "Revenge, Jiyeon," he cautioned, "is a double-edged sword. It can consume you. But justice is a foundation upon which a new future can be built." Jiyeon devoured every lesson, every book, every case study Mr. Han provided. She spent countless nights poring over financial reports, analyzing market trends, and dissecting corporate structures. Her natural intelligence, once stifled by privilege, bloomed under Mr. Han's tutelage. She learned to see the invisible threads of power, the hidden agendas, and the strategic vulnerabilities of even the most impenetrable empires. The grieving girl was gone, replaced by a woman whose eyes held a depth of knowledge and a chilling resolve. The quiet spark of defiance had ignited into a steady, unyielding flame. She was no longer just seeking revenge. She was meticulously crafting a masterpiece of retribution, fueled by a singular, unwavering purpose: to reclaim what was hers and to honor her father's memory, not with tears, but with triumph. A new chapter began for Jiyeon, one forged not in the shadow of her past, but under the guise of a carefully constructed new identity. Years of rigorous training with Mr. Han, combined with her innate brilliance and relentless drive, had honed her into a formidable strategist. She emerged from her self-imposed exile not as Jiyeon Park, the disgraced heiress, but as Jae Lee, a sharp, ambitious entrepreneur with an unassuming background. The name was chosen with subtle irony, a quiet nod to the family whose name she would eventually eclipse. Her appearance had also subtly changed. Her formerly elegant, almost delicate features were now framed by a confident, unyielding gaze, her posture radiating an understated power. Her first move was calculated and deliberate, the establishment of a modest but innovative tech startup. She chose the burgeoning field of sustainable urban logistics, a niche that her father, with his foresight, had once discussed exploring for Mirai Group. She named her company Lumen Logistics, a beacon of light in a tangled system. The initial capital came from a small inheritance Mr. Han had secretly set aside for her, combined with the meager savings she had painstakingly accumulated over her years of menial labor. It was a shoestring operation, run from a cramped rented office in a nondescript building, a far cry from the opulent Mirai headquarters. Jiyeon poured every ounce of her being into Lumen. She worked tirelessly, often sleeping on a cot in the office, fueled by instant coffee and an unyielding vision. She personally oversaw every detail, from coding algorithms to negotiating partnerships. Her leadership style was direct, efficient, and inspiring, earning the fierce loyalty of her small, talented team. Lumen's innovative approach, which leveraged AI and advanced data analytics to optimize delivery routes and reduce carbon footprints, quickly gained traction. They offered a smarter, greener, and more cost-effective solution than their larger, more entrenched competitors. Within 2 years, Lumen Logistics was no longer modest. It was a rising star, attracting venture capital and industry buzz. Jiyeon, as Jae Lee, was lauded as a visionary, a prodigy who had seemingly appeared out of nowhere. As Lumen Logistics blossomed, Jiyeon meticulously built her network and resources. She attended industry conferences, charming investors and potential partners with her understated confidence and undeniable intelligence. She cultivated relationships with tech innovators, logistics experts, and financial analysts, carefully selecting individuals who shared her values of integrity and innovation. Each connection was a carefully placed brick in the foundation of her new empire, each partnership a strategic alliance. She was not merely building a successful company, she was assembling an army piece by piece for a war yet to be declared. Her rise was rapid, but her focus remained unwavering. Every success, every new contract, every positive market report for Lumen was filtered through the lens of her ultimate goal, Mirai Group. She subscribed to every industry publication, followed every financial report, and maintained anonymous informants within various sectors that interacted with Mirai. She meticulously tracked their activities, noting their inefficiencies, their ethical compromises, and the slow, insidious decline. Under the stewardship of Hyejin and Minjun, they had steered Mirai away from her father's vision of sustainable growth and ethical leadership, instead favoring short-term gains, risky ventures, and a culture of cronyism. She saw how Minjun, with his penchant for opulent displays, had funneled company funds into lavish personal projects, while Hyejin, consumed by social climbing, neglected strategic investments in favor of superficial brand promotions. Seojun, now holding a mid-level executive position, was a perpetual source of frustration, his incompetence and arrogance evident in every disastrous project he touched. Jiyeon observed Mirai's stock price stagnate, their market share erode in key sectors, and their reputation, once pristine, slowly tarnish with whispers of scandal and mismanagement. These observations fueled her resolve, hardening her conviction that her return was not just about revenge, but about rescue. She wasn't just taking back what was hers, she was saving her father's legacy from utter ruin. The seeds of her new empire were sown, watered by ambition, and nurtured by a burning, unshakable desire for justice. Lumen Logistics, under the astute leadership of Jae Lee, had transitioned from a promising startup to a formidable market disruptor. Its innovative approach to logistics, leveraging cutting-edge AI and a commitment to sustainability, had not only captured significant market share, but had also forced established players to rethink their strategies. Lumen's sleek, efficient delivery networks and its reputation for reliability had made it a darling of the tech and logistics sectors. Jae Lee's name, though still relatively new to the upper echelons of the business world, was now spoken with a mixture of respect and cautious awe. She was known for her aggressive yet intelligent strategies, her uncanny ability to anticipate market shifts, and her unwavering focus on execution. Her company's rapid growth began to cast an ever-lengthening shadow, one that occasionally brushed against the sprawling, but increasingly sluggish, Mirai Group. Lumen's expansion into eco-friendly delivery solutions directly challenged some of Mirai's older, less efficient transport divisions. Their advanced data analytics platform started to chip away at Mirai's market dominance in supply chain optimization, offering superior predictive capabilities at a fraction of the cost. Jiyeon, through Jay Lee, maintained a deliberate distance from direct confrontation, preferring to outmaneuver rather than openly attack. But the impact was undeniable. In the gilded halls of Mirai Group, however, the Lee family remained largely oblivious. Hyejin and Minjun, cocooned in their lavish lifestyles, were too preoccupied with their own internal power struggles and the maintenance of their opulent image to truly grasp the shifting tides of the market. Hyejin was engrossed in high society galas and philanthropic ventures that primarily served to boost her personal brand, while Minjun was increasingly distracted by his side projects, speculative real estate investments and dubious art acquisitions, all funded with Mirai's capital. Their attention was fragmented, their focus diluted. Seojun, who now held a more prominent, albeit still largely ceremonial position within Mirai's logistics division, was the most vocal in dismissing Lumen, another one of these fly-by-night tech companies. He'd scoff during executive meetings, waving a dismissive hand at a presentation detailing Lumen's impressive growth. They burn bright, then burn out. Mirai has legacy, stability. These little startups are just fads. He refused to see Jiyeon's company as a genuine threat, blinded by his arrogance and the ingrained belief in Mirai's unshakable dominance. He never, not once, connected the formidable Jay Lee to the timid, broken girl he had helped cast out years ago. The possibility was simply unthinkable, utterly beyond the scope of his limited imagination. But Jiyeon, operating with the unseen hand of a master puppeteer, was already making strategic moves that subtly, yet effectively, impacted Mirai Group's market share and profitability. She orchestrated a series of targeted acquisitions of smaller, innovative logistics and tech firms that Mirai had overlooked or deemed insignificant. These acquisitions gave Lumen access to proprietary technologies and strategic distribution networks that Mirai would soon desperately need. She also subtly influenced public perception, sponsoring environmental campaigns that highlighted the need for sustainable logistics, inadvertently drawing unflattering comparisons to Mirai's older, less green practices. One particularly cunning move involved a partnership with a major e-commerce giant, a deal Mirai had been aggressively pursuing for years. Jiyeon, leveraging Lumen's superior technology and ethical reputation, swooped in at the last minute, securing the multi-billion-dollar contract. The loss was a stinging blow to Mirai, costing them significant revenue and prestige. Yet Minjun attributed it to unforeseen competition and market volatility, refusing to acknowledge the superior strategy of a company he considered beneath them. Hyejin, for her part, merely grumbled about the unethical tactics of these new players, never digging deeper. Jiyeon watched from a distance, a quiet satisfaction blossoming within her. Each whisper of Lumen's success, each subtle dip in Mirai's quarterly reports, was a testament to her meticulous planning and unwavering patience. The Lee family's arrogance was their greatest vulnerability, their blindness her most potent weapon. They were so busy basking in the stolen glory of Mirai, so engrossed in their petty squabbles and lavish expenditures, that they failed to see the storm gathering on the horizon, a storm orchestrated by the very person they had dismissed as insignificant. The whispers in the boardrooms of Seoul were growing louder, speaking of Jay Lee and her unstoppable rise, unaware that these whispers were merely the prelude to a deafening roar of retribution. If you're gripped by stories of epic comebacks and masterful revenge, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. With Lumen Logistics firmly established as a significant player, Jiyeon's strategy shifted from subtle encroachment to a series of more direct, yet still untraceable attacks on Mirai Group. She was no longer content with merely chipping away at their market share. She aimed to destabilize their foundations, to sow discord and doubt within their very structure, all while remaining an unseen, phantom menace. Her network of informants, meticulously cultivated over years, began to provide her with invaluable intelligence, details of Mirai's internal workings, its vulnerabilities, and the specific corrupt practices that had festered under the Lee family's lax and self-serving management. One of her most effective maneuvers involved exposing minor corruption within Mirai's extensive supply chain. Through a series of anonymous, untraceable leaks to investigative journalists and regulatory bodies, Jiyeon revealed instances of bribery and procurement, inflated invoices for substandard materials, and questionable labor practices in some of Mirai's overseas manufacturing facilities. The leaks were carefully timed and fragmented, making it impossible to trace them back to a single source, let alone to J. Lee or Lumen Logistics. The ensuing investigations, though not yet leading to major arrests, caused significant operational disruptions, delayed key projects, and crucially, damaged Mirai's carefully constructed public image. Their stock, once considered stable, began to dip slightly, a persistent, irritating tremor that the Lee family couldn't explain. Another strategic blow came in the form of a meticulously planned acquisition. Mirai Group relied heavily on a specific rare earth mineral, crucial for their electronics division, sourced from a small, independent mining operation in Southeast Asia. The Lee family, complacent in their long-standing relationship, had neglected to secure a long-term supply contract. Jiyeon, armed with this knowledge, discreetly approached the mining company, offering a significantly better deal, not just financially, but also promising ethical sourcing and sustainable practices. The acquisition was swift and quiet, and by the time Mirai's procurement team realized what was happening, the crucial resource was entirely under Lumen's control. The ensuing scramble within Mirai to find an alternative supplier was chaotic, costly, and embarrassing, further highlighting their operational incompetence. Production lines stalled, deadlines were missed, and profits suffered. The Lee family, increasingly flustered, felt the mounting pressure but remained utterly clueless about its true origin. Minjun, ever prone to paranoid delusions, blamed market fluctuations and aggressive foreign competitors. Hyejin, seeing her carefully constructed social facade begin to crack under the weight of negative press, attributed the problems to bad luck and unethical business rivals who were jealous of Mirai's legacy. Seojin, predictably, dismissed the supply chain issues as minor hiccups and the stock dip as temporary volatility, too engrossed in his lavish parties and superficial projects to grasp the gravity of the situation. He even tried to use his connections to discredit the journalists, only to find the evidence against Mirai too substantial to be easily dismissed. Jiyeon, from her vantage point, observed their growing frustration with a cool, clinical satisfaction. Each missed deadline, each dip in their stock, each public relations nightmare was a meticulously placed domino in her grand design. She allowed herself a small private smile as she read reports of Mirai's struggles, the headlines that subtly questioned their leadership. This wasn't just about financial damage, it was about psychological warfare. She was eroding their confidence, making them doubt their own competence, slowly tightening the noose around their necks without them even realizing they were being strangled. The unseen hand was guiding them, not to destruction, but to an inevitable, inescapable confrontation. The chessboard was set, the pieces were in motion, and the true players were about to be revealed. The stage, was being meticulously prepared for the grand unveiling, where the ghost of Jiyeon Park would finally reclaim her name and her empire. The day of the annual Mirai Group shareholder meeting arrived with an almost palpable tension, a foreboding stillness in the air that seemed to ripple through the polished marble halls of the headquarters. For weeks, rumors had swirled through the financial district like wildfire. An unknown entity, a powerful investment group, had been aggressively acquiring Mirai shares, quietly consolidating a significant stake. The Lee family, initially dismissive, had grown increasingly agitated as the buying continued. their frantic efforts to identify the buyer proving fruitless. The atmosphere in the boardroom, usually filled with self-congratulatory chatter, was now thick with anxiety and suspicion. Hyejin, Minjun, and Seojun sat at the head of the long mahogany table, their faces a mixture of strained smiles and barely concealed panic. The meeting commenced with Minjun's rambling, unconvincing speech about Mirai's resilience and future prospects, punctuated by nervous glances at the empty seat reserved for the mysterious new shareholder. Hyejin, usually composed, fidgeted with her pearl necklace, her eyes darting towards the door with growing apprehension. Seojun, pale and sweating despite the air conditioning, tried to project an air of nonchalance, but his leg bounced erratically under the table. They had tried everything. Legal, threats, backroom deals, desperate pleas to their remaining allies, but the shadowy buyer had been relentless, their identity impenetrable. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors at the back of the boardroom swung open. All heads snapped towards the entrance. A hush fell over the room, so profound that the ticking of the ornate grandfather clock in the corner seemed deafening. Standing framed in the doorway was a woman. She was impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, her hair pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon, revealing sharp, intelligent features. Her posture was regal, her gaze piercing, unwavering. She exuded an aura of quiet power, a controlled intensity that commanded immediate attention. She was no longer the timid, heartbroken girl they had exiled. This woman was a force of nature, refined and formidable. Minjun's jaw dropped. Hyejin's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Seojun, who had been about to make a sarcastic remark, found his voice caught in his throat, his eyes widening in a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. For a fleeting moment, a flicker of recognition, a ghost of the past, crossed their faces, but it was quickly overshadowed by utter bewilderment. How could it be? It was impossible. The woman walked slowly, deliberately, towards the head of the table, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. Her eyes, cool and assessing, swept over each member of the board, lingering for a fraction of a second on the petrified faces of the Lee family. There was no warmth, no flicker of old sentiment, only a calculated, unwavering resolve. She stopped directly opposite the Lee family, her presence dominating the room. Her gaze locked onto Hyejin, then Minjun, then finally Seojun, who now looked as if he had seen a specter. With a slow, deliberate movement, she reached into her jacket pocket and withdrew a single, unassuming document. She placed it gently on the table, her hand steady, her movements precise. The document was a certified declaration of her controlling stake in Mirai Group, the culmination of a hostile takeover executed with breathtaking precision and financial might, an undeniable reality that now stared them in the face. Then she spoke. Her voice, calm and resonant, cut through the oppressive silence like a diamond slicing glass. "Good morning, everyone," she began, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips, a smile devoid of warmth. "My name is Jiyeon Park." The revelation hung in the air, a devastating blow. The name, once synonymous with tragedy and weakness, now carried the weight of an unimaginable power. Gasps rippled through the room. Whispers erupted, quickly quelled by the sheer force of her presence. The Lee family's faces contorted in a grotesque tableau of shock, horror, and profound disbelief. Their carefully constructed world, built on deceit and betrayal, was crumbling before their very eyes. Jiyeon's eyes, cold and unwavering, finally settled on Seojun, who had visibly recoiled in his chair. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to a low, chilling tone that nonetheless carried to every corner of the room. The words were delivered not as a threat, but as an undeniable truth, a declaration of war. "You stole my inheritance," she stated, her voice laced with the quiet steel of years of suffering and relentless planning. "You stripped me of everything. Now I've returned." She paused, allowing the full weight of her statement to sink in, allowing them to truly grasp the magnitude of their downfall. Then, with a slow, deliberate cadence, she delivered the iconic line, the one that would forever mark the beginning of their reckoning, the true, impactful revenge. And I am your new boss. The silence that followed Jiyeon Park's declaration was absolute, a heavy, suffocating blanket that pressed down on the Lee family. Their initial shock quickly curdled into a desperate, futile rage. Minjun, his face mottled with fury, finally found his voice sputtering. "This is impossible, a trick. You can't just—" But Jiyeon merely raised a hand, a gesture of quiet authority that instantly silenced him. Her eyes, devoid of any past affection, held only the cold, hard glint of an executioner. "It is not a trick, uncle," she stated, her voice as sharp as a newly honed blade. "It is a meticulously executed acquisition, and as of this moment, every decision, every policy, and every individual within Mirai Group falls under my direct authority." The reckoning began immediately, surgically and systematically. Jiyeon wasted no time. Her first act as the newly reinstated CEO was to announce a comprehensive, independent internal audit of every department, every financial transaction, and every project initiated by Hyejin and Minjun Lee since her father's death. She brought in a team of forensic accountants and legal experts, all personally vetted and fiercely loyal to her, many of whom had been quietly cultivated over the years through Mr. Han's network. The scale of the Lee family's corruption quickly became apparent. Inflated contracts, ghost employees, shell companies funneling profits, lavish personal expenses disguised as business costs. The rot had spread deep and wide within Mirai Group. One by one, the Lee family's loyalists, the cronies who had benefited from their misrule, were identified and systematically replaced. High-level executives, who had once sneered at Jiyeon or actively participated in her exile, found themselves summarily dismissed, their access revoked, their careers abruptly ended. Jiyeon did not gloat. She merely acted with swift, decisive efficiency. She presented irrefutable evidence, delivered termination notices with cold precision, and ensured a seamless transition with her own trusted team, many of whom had risen through the ranks of Lumen Logistics and shared her vision of ethical leadership. The public humiliation of Seojin was a carefully orchestrated masterstroke of retribution. Jiyeon, now the ultimate authority, did not fire him outright, which would have been too merciful. Instead, she stripped him of his executive title and assigned him to a newly created, highly visible, restructuring oversight committee. His task? To publicly present detailed reports on the very inefficiencies and financial losses his own division had incurred under his watch. During his first such presentation, Jiyeon sat at the head of the table, her gaze unwavering as Seojin stammered through slides detailing his disastrous project failures, his incompetence laid bare for all to see. The board members, now loyal to Jiyeon, watched with a mixture of schadenfreude and a chilling understanding of her power. Seojin, once so arrogant, was reduced to a sweaty, trembling mess, his face crimson with shame as he was forced to condemn his own failings. "Your analysis is correct, Mr. Lee," Jiyeon stated calmly after one particularly damning slide. "The cost overruns and missed targets are indeed staggering. What steps do you propose to mitigate the damage caused by these oversights?" Her words, delivered without a trace of emotion, were a surgical incision, designed to inflict maximum pain. It was not just about taking back the company. It was about forcing them to witness the dismantling of their corrupt empire from the inside, to confront the true extent of their greed and incompetence. It was about exposing their true characters, not just to the world, but to themselves, making them face the devastating consequences of their actions. The Mirai Group, once a symbol of her father's integrity, had become a cancerous growth under the Lees. Jiyeon, with the precision of a skilled surgeon, began to cut away the diseased parts, preparing the body for a full and healthy recovery. The initial phase of her revenge was complete. She had reclaimed her throne. But the real, impactful retribution had just begun. A systematic unraveling of their power, their reputation, and their very sense of self-worth. The Lee family, trapped within the walls of the company they had stolen, were now forced to watch as Jiyeon, the girl they had discarded, wielded her power with an iron fist, transforming their stolen empire into her weapon of justice. The unraveling of the Lee family's empire was swift and brutal. a public spectacle orchestrated with Jiyeon's cold, unyielding precision. The internal audits she initiated quickly unearthed a labyrinthine web of financial malfeasance, embezzlement, and corporate fraud. Armed with irrefutable evidence, Jiyeon ensured that the findings were not merely confined to the boardroom. She strategically leaked select, damning documents to trusted investigative journalists, the same ones who had once been subtly fed information about Mirai's minor issues. The resulting exposé rocked the Korean business world, becoming a front-page scandal that dominated news cycles for weeks. Minjun and Hyejin Lee, once paragons of high society, found themselves at the center of intense investigations by financial regulators and law enforcement. Their lavish lifestyles, once flaunted with impunity, were now scrutinized under a harsh public glare. Every designer outfit, every extravagant party, every luxury car was suddenly perceived as a symbol of their ill-gotten gains. The public backlash was ferocious. The very social circles that Hyejin had so desperately tried to cultivate now turned their backs, their former allies, recoiling from the stench of scandal. Charity boards expelled her, exclusive clubs revoked their memberships, and invitations to elite gatherings abruptly ceased. They were pariahs, ostracized and humiliated, their names now synonymous with greed and corruption. Jiyeon ensured their downfall was not just financial and legal, but profoundly reputational. She held press conferences, speaking with a calm, authoritative voice about her father's original vision for Mirai and the unfortunate detour it had taken under the previous management. She never openly maligned her aunt and uncle, but her carefully chosen words, coupled with the damning evidence she allowed to surface, painted a clear picture of their betrayal and incompetence. The contrast between her dignified resolve and their panicked, defensive denials only served to amplify their public shame. Seojin, already reeling from his boardroom humiliation, faced an even more excruciating fate. Jiyeon did not fire him. Instead, she reassigned him to a menial, highly visible position within Mirai, specifically within the company's new ethical sourcing department, a cruel irony given his past. His task was to personally oversee the implementation of the very transparency protocols his family had so vehemently opposed, effectively forcing him to clean up the mess he and they had created. He was reduced to a glorified errand boy, forced to sit through interminable meetings where he was openly ridiculed by junior employees and external partners who once sought his favor. The sight of him, once strutting through the halls, now meekly carrying files or fetching coffee, was a stark, daily reminder of his spectacular fall from grace. Jiyeon made sure the Lee family felt the sting of the world turning against them, just as it had for her years ago. She ensured that the legal proceedings, while fair, were drawn out and public, forcing them to endure endless questioning and the relentless glare of the media. She allowed them to retain a fraction of their personal assets, enough to live a comfortable but significantly diminished life, thereby denying them the martyrdom of complete destitution. Instead, they were forced to witness her, Jiyeon Park, the girl they had dismissed as insignificant, systematically restoring the Mirai Group to its former glory, brick by painstaking brick. They saw their father's company, which they had nearly ruined, rising from the ashes, revitalized and more ethical than ever, under the leadership of the very person they had betrayed. The weight of justice was crushing them, not just with legal penalties and financial losses, but with the unbearable burden of public shame and the loss of their social standing. They were forced to watch as their legacy, once defined by wealth and power, became synonymous with deceit and failure. For Jiyeon, it was a profound, chilling satisfaction. The humiliation they had inflicted upon her, the isolation, the public scorn, she had returned it to them tenfold and with devastating precision. The mirror had been turned, and they were finally forced to gaze upon the grotesque reflection of their own actions. Her revenge was complete, but more importantly, justice had been served, cold and uncompromising. If Jiyeon's unwavering determination resonates with you, give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps the channel. With the Lee family neutralized, their power stripped, their reputations in tatters, and their legal battles consuming their every waking moment, Jiyeon Park finally turned her full attention to the gargantuan task of rebuilding Mirai Group. The company she had inherited was a shadow of its former self, its foundations weakened by years of mismanagement and corruption. But Jiyeon, tempered by adversity and sharpened by purpose, was more than ready for the challenge. She envisioned not just a restoration, but a fundamental transformation, one that would honor her father's original vision while propelling Mirai into a future defined by innovation, ethics, and sustainability. Her first priority was to cleanse the corporate culture. She implemented rigorous ethical guidelines, established transparent reporting mechanisms, and fostered an environment where integrity was prized above all else. She launched a massive internal training program, emphasizing employee empowerment and a renewed commitment to social responsibility. Many of the loyal, long-serving employees who had been marginalized by the Lee family were reinstated and promoted, their experience and dedication invaluable in the company's revitalization. Jiyeon, once the quiet heiress, now walked the halls of Mirai with an undeniable presence, her decisions swift, her leadership inspiring. She was approachable yet firm, a CEO who led by example, working tirelessly alongside her team. She systematically divested from the speculative, ethically questionable ventures initiated by Min-jun, redirecting resources into sustainable technologies and community-focused projects. Lumen Logistics, her own brainchild, was strategically integrated into Mirai Group, its innovative spirit and cutting-edge technology becoming the engine for Mirai's digital transformation. Under her guidance, Mirai invested heavily in renewable energy, circular economy initiatives, and smart urban infrastructure, aligning the company with the global demands of the 21st century. The Mirai Group, once a lumbering giant, began to shed its old skin, emerging as a lean, agile, and forward-thinking enterprise. Its stock price soared, its market share rebounded, and its reputation, once tarnished, shone brighter than ever before. As Mirai Group flourished under her leadership, Jiyeon often found herself in quiet moments of reflection. The grand penthouse, now her home again, no longer felt like a golden cage or a mausoleum. It was a home, a place of peace and purpose. She would stand on the rooftop garden, tending to her plants, gazing out at the sprawling city lights and ponder the emotional toll of her journey. The revenge, while meticulously executed and undeniably effective, had left an emptiness, a hollowness that even triumph could not entirely fill. The satisfaction of justice served was profound, a deep, resonant chord in her soul, but it was not the joyous elation she might have once imagined. The years of struggle, the cold calculation, the necessity of embodying a ruthlessness that had once been alien to her nature. These had left their indelible marks. She realized that true fulfillment did not lie in the mere act of retribution, but in the power to create, to build, to foster positive change. Her father had envisioned Mirai as a force for good, a legacy of innovation and integrity. Jiyeon had not just reclaimed that legacy, she had elevated it. She had become what her father had always intended her to be, a visionary leader, but one forged in fire, tempered by betrayal and driven by a wisdom that transcended mere vengeance. The pursuit of justice had transformed her, not into the cold, calculating figure her enemies were, but into a stronger, more resilient leader, capable of building a future different from the one that had once wounded her so deeply. Her power wasn't just for retribution, it was for creation, for innovation, and for ensuring that her father's name and Mirai Group would forever stand for something truly impactful and good. The Seoul skyline, a glittering tapestry of steel and light, stretched before Jiyeon from the panoramic windows of her penthouse office. It had been several years since she had reclaimed Mirai Group, and the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. The company, once a symbol of her father's vision marred by the Lee family's greed, now stood as a towering testament to resilience and ethical innovation. Its new headquarters, a marvel of sustainable architecture, pulsed with a renewed energy, a stark contrast to the stagnant air that had permeated its halls under Hyejin and Min-jun. Mirai was not merely recovering, it was flourishing, a true beacon in the fiercely competitive Korean business landscape, recognized globally for its integrity and forward-thinking strategies. Under Jiyeon's unwavering leadership, Mirai Group had embraced a philosophy of shared prosperity, a term her father had often used, but one that had been discarded by his successors. This philosophy manifested in tangible ways: fair wages and benefits that exceeded industry standards, robust employee training and development programs, and a steadfast commitment to transparent governance. The corporate culture, once riddled with cronyism and fear, had been meticulously rebuilt on trust and meritocracy. Jiyeon fostered an environment where ideas were celebrated, innovation was rewarded, and every voice, from the newest intern to the most seasoned executive, held value. She often walked through the bustling open-plan offices, engaging with employees, listening to their insights, and sharing her vision with an authenticity that inspired fierce loyalty. They saw not just a CEO, but a leader who genuinely cared, a stark departure from the aloof and self-serving executives of the past. Her presence was a comforting, inspiring force, a living embodiment of the new Mirai. The integration of Lumen Logistics had been a masterstroke, catapulting Mirai into the forefront of sustainable urban development and AI-driven solutions. Their smart city initiatives, once conceptual dreams, were now tangible realities, transforming infrastructure across the nation and beyond. Mirai's renewable energy division, once a minor segment, had grown exponentially, pioneering breakthroughs in solar and wind technology, setting new industry benchmarks. The market recognized this profound shift. Investors flocked to Mirai, not just for its impressive financial returns, but for its unblemished reputation. Industry accolades poured in, celebrating Mirai's commitment to environmental stewardship, social responsibility, and groundbreaking innovation. The Mirai Group name, once whispered with pity and scorn, was now spoken with admiration and respect, a global standard for ethical corporate citizenship, a testament to Jiyeon's vision. Yet amidst this triumph, Jiyeon often found herself in quiet contemplation. The frenetic pace of rebuilding had slowed, replaced by the steady rhythm of growth and refinement. The burning intensity that had fueled her quest for justice had softened, transforming into a calm, steady flame of purpose. She had achieved everything she had set out to do, and more. The Lee family, stripped of their power and prestige, were now living lives of quiet ignominy, their names fading from public memory, replaced by the enduring legacy of Jiyeon Park's triumph. Seojin, after a brief, humiliating stint in the ethical sourcing department, had eventually resigned, unable to bear the daily reminders of his disgrace. He was last heard of trying to launch a small, unsuccessful online boutique, a far cry from the corporate empire he had once squandered. Hyejin and Minjun faced ongoing legal battles, their once grand penthouse seized to cover some of their colossal debts. They were broken, not by Jiyeon's direct hand, but by the relentless, inevitable consequences of their own actions. Their downfall was a cautionary tale, a footnote in Mirai's revitalized history. The satisfaction of this justice, while profound, had evolved. It was no longer a fierce, consuming fire, but a quiet, deep-seated peace. She had not become them. She had not allowed the bitterness of betrayal to corrupt her own soul, to turn her into the ruthless hollow shell her enemies had been. Instead, she had used her experience, her pain, and her meticulously acquired power to build something better, something truly worthy of her father's name. This was her true inheritance, not just the company, but the wisdom gleaned from her arduous journey, the profound understanding that power, when wielded with integrity and compassion, could be a force for immense, lasting good. Her legacy, she realized, would not be defined by the revenge she sought, but by the future she built. She meticulously laid the groundwork for Mirai's long-term sustainability, establishing foundations and trusts that would ensure its ethical trajectory far beyond her own tenure. She mentored young talent, particularly women, pushing them to break through glass ceilings and embrace leadership roles, ensuring a diverse and inclusive future for the company. She championed initiatives that empowered marginalized communities, understanding firsthand the crushing weight of being stripped of everything. Jiyeon ensured that Mirai Group was not just a successful business, but a responsible global citizen, deeply embedded in the fabric of society, contributing meaningfully to a better world, fostering a culture of fairness and progress that resonated far beyond its balance sheets. One crisp autumn evening, as the city lights twinkled beneath her, Jiyeon stood on the rooftop garden of her penthouse. The air was cool, carrying the delicate scent of blooming jasmine from the carefully tended planters. She reached out, touching a delicate, unfolding petal. The garden, once a symbol of her gilded cage, was now her sanctuary, a place where she felt a deep connection to the earth and to her own enduring spirit. She thought of her father, of his quiet strength and unwavering integrity, and a gentle smile touched her lips. She knew he would be proud, not just of the company she had rebuilt, but of the woman she had become. The scars of her past remained, etched into the very core of her being, but they no longer defined her. They were reminders of the crucible that had forged her, testaments to her resilience. The journey had been long, arduous, and at times emotionally devastating. She had walked through fire, emerging not unscathed, but stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. The desire for retribution had been a powerful engine, driving her through years of hardship and meticulous planning, but it had ultimately given way to a higher purpose: creation. She had reclaimed her destiny, yes, but in doing so, she had also redefined what victory truly meant. It wasn't just about winning back what was lost. It was about using that victory to leave a lasting, positive impact, to build a future brighter and more equitable than the past, demonstrating that true triumph lies in the transformation of adversity into a catalyst for good. Jiyeon Park, the discarded heiress, had not only reclaimed her empire, but had transformed it into a legacy of hope and progress. She had found her peace, a quiet, profound sense of fulfillment that resonated deep within her soul. The journey was complete, and a new path, paved with purpose and integrity, stretched out before her, limitless and full of promise. The true inheritance was not just Mirai Group, but the unwavering spirit that now guided its destiny, ensuring its impact would echo for generations to come. Loved Jiyeon's story? Then be sure to check out these other captivating videos on your screen right now.